call us at 858-251-6111. And Dr. Thompson, I leave it to you to say how else they may keep up with us.
Yes, yes, yes. We are actually on Facebook and YouTube tonight. And I tell you, Dr. Warren, um, you know, with the technology, as you guys can see, we're a little bit lighter tonight. And we finally got the lights in. Um, we have finally got the lights in to make sure that the video is going to be sharper. And stay tuned. We are still developing the whole entire look of the new environment and new station. But as I told you before we got on the air, the program director would be tuned in tonight. And the first thing that she said, turn up, Dr. Warren. And so, I'm getting directions, Dr. Warren, that we gotta turn you up.
Okay, okay. Well, tell her thank you very much.
So let me ask you a question. This start off. Can we do a recap of the 63rd annual gala that we just had on last Friday?
Yes, we can. It was a very successful event held at the Jacob Center. As you know, we had limited the in person seating out of respect for the pandemic. And so we had a full house. It was an elegant affair. Mandy just did it up in terms of the layout from the red carpet, the hallway, the awards presentation. People were impressed with the videos that we did in terms of black press history. And it was just phenomenal. And I think you were able to track some numbers for us. In addition to the people that were there, it was a sellout event. Some people still showing up at the door thinking they could get a ticket, and
Yeah.
that couldn't be happening. But you might comment, Dr. Thompson, on the numbers that we got since we streamed the event.
Yeah, we actually at one point had over 250, 2,500 people actually viewing it as we were streaming it live. And so that was very exciting that we were able to do the reach out and see those numbers of the streaming. And it just shows to say that even though we had limited seating, more people were actually able to experience the event than we had ever done before.
And that was the streaming portion because on our website we had some numbers in terms of people who came and stayed with the whole program, and numbers were still coming in and going up in different areas.
Yeah.
The beauty of it is that the event is online, just as the first
Mm-hmm.
22, 2021, 2022, and it's all online. The awardees, the accolades, the program, the entertainment was outstanding. The food service was just tremendous in terms of its accuracy and consistency of taking care of people. So it was a successful evening all the way around for us.
Yes, yes, yes. And some of the highlights to see um, Mr. Brown receive his award, and Mr. Shy Brown actually had a lot to say.
Yes, he did. I was in standing back, kind of pulling his coat for a while there, because he was going to take us off through History Row.
Yeah.
But we kind of got him under control with that, and he appreciated it. Getting the humanitarian award. We had three awards for Good Shepherd pastors,
Mm-hmm.
going to Reverend Whitmill, also to Pastor Nate Stewart,
Mm-hmm.
and to Pastor Roland Slade of Meridian Baptist Church in El Cajon. So,
Mm-hmm.
and then we gave an unusual award to the San Diego Foundation in recognition of their helping our community to so many things that they did. And of course, one of the highlights was the Judicial Excellence Award given to Judge Roderick Sheldon. And I am just so appreciative of the number of judges that turned out in
Mm-hmm.
person to be there in support of him. And we recognized Regina Wilson, who has been very instrumental in helping us as the black press get information out, and a part of a statewide effort. And I had several publishers present from the Wave and Inland Valley News, I think the Oakland Post, And so it was a very significant evening,
Hmm.
and it was followed Saturday morning by a meeting with the publishers that I had here at GOD Radio One for
Hmm.
about 5 hours as we dealt with some business of the industry.
Now, can we talk about, every awardee was contacted to ask them what music that they wanted to play as they came up, and I must say that Judge Rod Shelton, I think, had the highlight of the night when he came in with Mystical. It was almost the same theme music that Deion Sanders when he said, "Play my theme music." It's like, and he come up, doom, doom, doom,
Yeah.
and he said he felt it, and I thought that that was really cool because normally when we think of judges and people of high status, we sometimes think that they're stuffy, they're not fun, but I think that the overall night was very serious, but yet it was very fun. Yeah.
Well, it was, and the unique thing about it is, we have a whole new generation of black judges. They're youthful, they're vibrant, they're down to earth, they're friendly, they're not stuck up, and so they just make all the difference in the world. And I was glad that Judge Trapp was there
Hmm.
because she was like one of our first heroes in terms of the judiciary, and she's retired now,
Hmm.
along with Judge Joe and Tina Littlejohn. Both judges were there.
Hmm.
He was on the bench, and she was administrative law, and we had a great time with them because my family's contact with Judge Joe Littlejohn goes back to when he was a principal,
Hmm.
and then I met him later when we were both school board members, and so and he clerked for the city attorney's office because they still talked about the relationship with him during the time I was there. So it was a good evening, and I think we gave people a lot more insight into the voice and viewpoint
Hmm.
because a couple of years ago we said the best was yet to come, and we're still bringing it now.
Now, one of the things I do have to say a special highlight. My granddaughter truly enjoyed being the guest of the publisher. She came, and I have to say she was awful dressed. She had on a cape with her dress, and I was like, no, she didn't come with the cape, but she pulled out all the stops, and it was the very first time that she ever wore heels.
And when we acknowledged her being there, we made it very clear that people understood that she brought her grandmother, and it wasn't the other way around.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and, and I think that that's so significant. And I want to send a shout out to the Black Queens that came
Yes,
because they had for this was kind of like the first time that we had very youthful queens,
very youthful
and they
and
were
gracious.
yes, and so it was very nice to see the queens come out, and they were so poised, and I thought that that was amazing to see them, and they enjoyed their time, and they were not they were queens, but they didn't act queenly in the sense of we're going to sit here and be seen. They actually came in and they were actually very hands on and very personable to their role as greeting the people and making sure everybody got to their seat.
And that's what they wanted to do, and
Hmm.
they welcomed the opportunity to escort people to their seats, and so it was all a great event. It went
Hmm.
very well, and we hope that we can expand and improve upon it. But Dr. Thompson, that was one of those days that we were doing things.
Hmm.
We still have a lot on our plate as we look at Black History Month,
Hmm.
and it's moving away from us pretty fast. It's the shortest month in the year, and we've been trying to encourage people to make every day a part of Black history, both in terms of reviewing, learning it, and then making it
Hmm.
in terms of how they contribute to it.
Hmm.
Okay, and so a lot of things are happening as we move forward. I think one of the big things that's happening in Black History Month is that um, this Sunday, I believe, Congresswoman Barbara Lee out of the Oakland area, who took Congressman Dellum's place, and she declared it on the 15th already, but she's doing a Zoom meeting down here. But she has declared her candidacy for the Senate to
Okay.
take the seat now occupied by Dianne Feinstein, who said she was retiring, she wasn't going to run again. And so, of course, Adam Schiff, who was a part of the January 6th committee, had already made his declaration. But my bet, and I hope that the state of California will do for Barbara Lee what Texas did for Raphael Warnock.
Hmm.
And if they do that, it don't matter how much money the other side got. It's going to make all the difference in the world. I am very concerned that at the same time we're celebrating and supporting her, we shouldn't have to do this because the governor should have appointed her to take the place of Vice President Harris.
Hmm.
And it should be Padilla running now for the seat.
Yeah.
Not do you going to take the one black woman who was the first from the state to go to the Senate. She steps up to the vice presidency, the highest position she can have, and then you turn around and put somebody else in to replace her. The Latino community would have turned out to support Padilla even in this time, and we would have had a sure thing in terms of a continuation.
Hmm.
So now we've got to fight for what should have been ours in the first place.
Okay.
And I hope that we can play a major role in getting people to understand that this sister should be there. She's paid her dues. She did it in the assembly. That I've known her since we worked as co-workers on Capitol Hill 50 years ago
Okay.
when she was working for Dellums. And I want to see us do for her what LA did for Karen Bass.
So what we're looking at right now is that the election season has officially started,
Oh, yes.
and that 2 years will come by very, very quickly. It's less than 2 years before the next presidential election. And so we actually have to start the work now to talk about who is going to be in position, not just locally, but statewide and then national. And we're going to have to make it a priority because this next election is really going to set the climate for the next 20 years.
Oh, it will. If we make it to the next election as a country, it will. And I am very concerned about our security and the state of where we are. I'm also concerned that we are beginning to talk locally. I know it happens among Black Men and Women United about grooming. Who are we going to groom for the next round? Because people are terming out. And I really think that's the wrong question. I think the real question is who is demonstrating enough service and concern that they would be worthy of the support that would come for whatever position. I think it is a mistake to groom people for a position when you don't know where they stand, where their heart is, what their commitments are. Because I can tell you from experience, one of the most earth-shaking experiences once you become an elected official is the day that comes when you have to make a decision, and you've got to make a decision for people other than yourself, and at the same time you're considering that there are people lined up on both sides that somebody's going to shoot at you either way you go. And to me, it's like getting in a fight in the ring and expecting not to get hit. And so it's going to take some character in terms of who we put in future positions, not just because they're black. And we have some ethnic rivalry brewing because we know that the Latino and Asian communities would like to have the District 4 seat. Here locally, we also going to have a vacancy in the 4th Supersorial District if Fletcher is successful in his run for the Senate. And so while we're kind of pontificating, other elements of the community are already organizing and planning what they're going to take. And the question is, are we going to come off recess and get back in the room, or are we going to stay outside on the playground while the decision's made for us?
So that's the question I would ask because other factions are coming together. They're vetting their people now. They're putting their people in position so that they can push them for the run. If we don't vet people now, and I'm not saying go find somebody and then train them, but literally look at where we're at, who's serving, who's doing that, and then sit down and say, because I personally been vetting one person to run for something, and she has told me that she is no longer going to put her hat in the ring, to my dismay. But I thought we had one there for a minute.
Well, public office is funny thing. I was in a supermarket the other day in Mission Valley, and a clerk there who is not a member of our community and I've seen him, and I was waiting in line, and he hollered back at me, "Hey, Dr. Warren," and then he says to me, he says, "Hey, you know what? You should really run for office." He's shouting this at me in line, and I'm giving him the line from the American Express commercial when the old man said, "Been there, done that,
Hmm.
not interested." But it shows that some people think that the greatest reward they can give you if they appreciate what you're doing is to run you for office.
Hmm.
And that's not necessarily the case. And so we've got to educate people beyond that because what most folks don't understand is the position that you have toward electoral politics in America, and especially uh, in black communities, if you're outside of places like Atlanta, is one of educating you not to be prepared to participate.
Hmm.
And very few black people, when they come out of school, high school in particular, or going into college, they don't know as much about government as the immigrants who are preparing to hold their hands up and become citizens.
Now, let me ask you a question, and maybe you can help me with this. Is it true that most chiefs of staff make more than the elected official?
Um, it has been true in many instances, but San Diego, with this cycle around, they gave pay increases to the elected officials. Before then, it was definitely true, and I'm not quite sure, but um, I don't think many of them, for instance, make more than the mayor. Uh, this community, like most, have always resisted giving pay raises to elected officials. And that's a two-edged sword because on the one hand, if you don't give a pay raise, you're not going to get the best, number one. And number two, the idea that people should serve without being recognized or compensated is really ridiculous because when you're an elected official, people are pulling on you 24 hours a day. They don't think that you should ever have any time off
Hmm.
or be able to do anything other than be at the, they see you as a servant rather than appreciating the position. And then we have those people who go after the position just for the money and recognition, and uh, and they're just as bad on the opposite side of the coin. So we got to get more serious because some people I know that are thinking about running at this point, I wouldn't support them for dog catcher, and they think just because they can get up and throw their name out and say they're gonna run for office that's gonna do it. We got to get beyond that kind of stupidity and start making some serious decisions about who is willing and able to do the job, not what they look like. Do they smile? Did they kiss my baby? Are they friendly toward me? Who can get the job done?
Hmm.
Because we got a lot of work we need done here.
Yeah, and one of the biggest thing about it is that you can get elected in district elections, but if you cannot literally build consensus and build bridges with other council people or people that you're working with, then you become ill. You become ineffective because you need to count on the council. What is it? You got to count to five.
Well, the consensus is all building is a term that they always use because no individual council member or individual elected official to any body has any more power than the majority of those people are siding with that person to make something take place.
Hmm.
That's how laws are made. That's how policy is made. And so, yeah, you got to be able to work with people, but at the same time, you got to have enough character. I think George Stevens was a perfect example of somebody who stood his guns, stood his ground. People respected him to the extent that even if they didn't agree with him, uh, they appreciated where he was coming from, and that's one of the challenges today, is having people who are anchored and who are not offended every time you say something that they disagree with and they want to get an attitude because I think they forget there's such a thing as a recall or there's such a provision under state law to called malfeasance in office,
Hmm.
where even mayors can be recalled, as
Hmm.
we've seen things happen. And
Yeah,
so it's just time to get serious about the issues before us. But
yeah.
that's just a part of it, Dr. Thompson. We got so many things on the table with us this evening. Uh, we still got people in Black History Month that don't know the words to the Negro National Anthem. So I'm publishing them in the paper every week going forward
Hmm.
until somebody tells me they've learned them because I'm tired of seeing black folks stand up in a program that is a part of the program, and they got to look to see who put the printed word there for them to look at. It's just a
Yeah.
unforgivable sin.
Well, one of the things is that when we were doing the African American Male Development Project, that was a part of everything that the kid that came through the program. You had to know the Black National Anthem, and you had to be able to sing it on the spot. You know, you know, I love good movies, and the movie Lean on Me,
Yeah.
when he was like, sing the school song, sing the school song, and they had remixed it, and he was like, who taught you that? Come with me. And he said, you just rewrote the school song. I think that there's something when we challenge our young people, if they could learn rap lyrics and song lyrics and everything else. This is very simple, but if it's not important to us, then how does it become important to them?
Well, I'm glad you used that example, Lean on Me, because one of the city council members in New Jersey, and I think rose to be president of the city council, she was one of the students when that movie was made.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I mean, it's just interesting to see how what happens when a person's life gets the right influence.
Yeah.
Because one would have never thought. I didn't recognize it, and my wife and a couple of our board members did because they had tracked her through her development. But we have to show people that we care. And San Diego's had some very caring people in our history here.
Mm-hmm.
You remember Mr. and Mrs. Wilson? They're both deceased now. Who every Christmas they started cooking Christmas dinners for people and feeding folks from their home,
Mm-hmm.
and they grew to such a large extent that the Navy actually got involved and started cooking the turkeys for them on base.
Yes.
And after he passed, she continued to do it until she couldn't do it anymore. People like that and the Juneteenth celebrations. It's just there are always those people that God drops into our lives and our community that really care and go out of their way. They were the ones I always look at as the unsung heroes in terms of what they do.
Yeah, and I think that as we go through African American History Month and this begin to see the highlights this weekend, you're going to be honored at the museum. It is this weekend, right?
Yeah, the San Diego Museum of African American Fine Arts in Balboa Park, I believe, on the 25th.
Yeah, and so you're
Yeah.
going to be honored. Let's just talk about what that means, because I've watched this and I said he got a picture. You know what I'm saying? Because there are other pictures that are up there, and sometimes in history we were like, well, how did they get there before this person got there? But as long as they all get there, at some point, is important. And I'm excited that this year you, Ken Anderson, and several other people are being recognized at the museum and added to their display.
Well, I've heard about it. I haven't seen it, and a lot of people have come to me and commented on it. It's kind of a weird feeling to be living history, to become an elder and to realize that you are one that, yeah, like when we do the Balm of Gilead at our event, and that's the Lift Every Voice and Sing, and we got the video of all of these people that have come before us, Barbara Jordan and Andy Young and just so many folks. As I sit there, every time I look at this thing, and I realize that in the past 50 years, at some point, I interacted with, met, or talked to most of these people, and they're all gone at this point. And I just think that we need to stop being so concerned about what people are trying to do to stop us and reunite so that we can move on in spite of them. And that's why this week I've done editorial. I believe I talk about Black history and Jim Crow. Because they're trying to reinstitute Jim Crow down in Mississippi, in Jackson, Mississippi. They're trying to create in an area that is a predominantly black community. And Benny Thompson, who was chair of the January 6th committee, is in his district. They have carved out an area where they want to put in a whole separate judicial system. And this is a step back because the people there are black folks that would be under control of this entity in a city that has a black mayor, predominantly black community, and then you're going to try to carve out an enclave to reimpose Jim Crow racism. You know, and this element, just like Marjorie Taylor Greene today coming out talking about we need to divide America, we need to divorce America and have red states and blue states, and of course the red states would take us back to, uh, uh, you know,
Confederate. Yeah.
pre-Reconstruction racism because it's predominantly black people, the jobs and stuff are not there, and so it's like they stay up at night figuring out ways to undermine and try to stop us because we're making progress in so many ways. The problem is we don't seem to be aware that they're doing it. And when we become aware, we'll stop being afraid of helping each other.
Yeah, and you know, one of the things that's just really sad is that, and sometimes we see it happening, and we also assist them in making it happen. You know, and just this me, I'm gonna do a sidebar. I'm personally sick and tired of hearing about the cannabis issue.
Oh, yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And the reason why I'm tired of it is because, again, yes, they are blocking people that went to jail for selling a little bit of cannabis. That, you know, they should just basically say, okay, if you're in jail right now for selling cannabis, it's legal now. Your
We're going
record
to
will
let you
be
out.
expunged and everything else. I agree with that. But I also say that the whole fight, well, we should be able to get into the industry and this should happen and we shouldn't be blocked. It's still affecting our community. You can still get a DUI. You can still lose your job for coming to work high. It still affects our community in a negative way, just like alcohol. So why are we fighting over something that still kills and hurts our community?
Because the people are using cannabis and wanting to sell it as they did when it was more criminalized. Let's remember something. It's only been decriminalized within the states that have made it legal to sell it.
Exactly.
It is still on a restrictive federal list, and the government just hasn't made the battle because, based on the Constitution, you cannot have a local law that's in conflict with a federal law.
Yeah.
And everybody is kind of turning their head because there's so much money involved in it. To give you an idea of what happened, when they first opened these shops, the people were racking in money, but they didn't know what to do with it because they couldn't go to the bank. They couldn't open a bank account because they were selling an illegal product according to the federal law, which controls the banks.
Exactly.
And so then they were trying to find stores and businesses to funnel money through and hide it and do all of those kind of things that shouldn't be. So we're still hypocritical, but I don't want us to get too far off on cannabis. We still got a gun issue in America. Had another triple murder this evening in Florida. A child, a mother, a journalist. People still shooting people. It's used to be just white folks going berserk with automatic weapons. Now it's black folks enjoying white folks, and it's just people crazy. It used to be it was only white cops that were brutalizing black people. Now it's black cops joining white cops in brutalizing people. And so we just have a moral decay and breakdown. And yet we still have a Congress that can't get together to ban an assault weapon. There is no reason on earth for people to have assault weapons at home unless, like they are in rural America, that they are arming themselves against who? Them. And who are the them? The them are people of color who are exploding in terms of the numbers of this country and population, while whites are becoming a minority, and they are afraid that people are going to treat them the way they treated people when they were the majority.
But you know, the reason why I feel like it's really ludicrous is because it just appears to me that we are yet still very passionate people. We're very kind people, and we still seek to be just even when it's unjust to us. We
All the
seem to
time.
always be fair, and that's what troubles me about leadership when you have an African American a leader of the eighth largest school district in the country. I hate to say it, but I don't want to hear about you didn't feel accepted as a black kid growing up, be it on the white side or the black side. What are you going to do now to change it for every other kid? You know what I'm saying? Tell me about solutions. Move me forward. Stop crying and crying in front of folks and move me forward. Let's not just continue to talk about the past. We got to move into the future. And our kids are suffering now because we're so busy trying to be fair to everybody else versus putting the best players on the field.
Well, see, this is why we are missing the attack. The see what critical race theory and the banning of books, and they had a situation in Florida where a substitute teacher took a picture of the empty bookshelves because anything dealing with race, blacks, civil rights leaders, all those things are just being pulled out. And because this person took a picture of the empty bookshelves, he's being charged with a felony under state law. And so, what do? These people understand that if we can erase your memory going back at least 25 years, we can reconstruct history as we want you to know it. And look how long it was before we knew that in Reconstruction we had two black senators, and it was over 100 years before we got another one. And now the one that we have in there before Warnick was just Tim Scott from South Carolina. Well, he reminds you of the saying that all skin ain't kin, because he's so hung up in the Republican thing. They want to run him for president just because he's black, and that's like running that football player down in Georgia. So we got people. They're desperate. They're pulling out, and this is the time we should be circling the wagons. If they take away AP, if they take away the black books, we got churches. We can move books into the libraries. We can open up the libraries. We don't have to rely upon the internet. You and I grew up without the internet.
Yeah.
We got kids that can't read now. They're falling behind in reading. They're no longer teaching how to write, cursor,
Yeah.
and they think that the shorthand language on texting is standard grammar.
Yeah. And I think that that's where we have to get to now. We cannot wait for people to do things for us. And this goes not just for African American people, this goes for the church folks too. We're so busy for laws to be righted and people to say this way. But if we take a stand and we say, look, they're not teaching it in school, we'll teach it over here. The churches are there. The community centers are there. People's homes are there. You know what I'm saying? If the kids don't, I guarantee you right now, if I did a contest and said, whoever comes up with the best rendition of Lift Every Voice and Sing with all the words right, you win $100. Boy, I have every kid up here coming up there saying, lift every voice and sing. And some kids like, I'll do it for $1,000. No, I'm not bargaining with you. I'm just saying that, I want you to learn and I'm going to challenge you. But then when we start giving them, and I have to say this again, embarrassing wise, it just didn't hit my head until this year that Martin Luther King was not originally named Martin Luther King. I mean, I know it sounds crazy. I know I heard it before, but it was like this was the year that it actually sunk in. You feel what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So when you know your history, you know your greatness, and it's important to continue to review and review and review. Just like when we read the word and we see another understanding, you get another revelation, you got to continue to review and understand and study. And then here's the whole thing, and review other cultures so that you will understand them. So when you don't have to fight other cultures, it's because you actually took the time to get to know who they are.
Yeah, and that way you're not going to be all jumping up and down over Cinco de Mayo, because that wasn't Mexican independence. It came in September, not in May.
Exactly.
But, when you talk about names, one of the things we do in the paper is we are the vehicle for legally announcing name changes. And we have name changes every day. We've had a lot of people in our community that have changed their names. And it's kind of interesting that people, they look at and they think about what name and they change it, and then they go and they insist on being known about it. It's important to do that. Well, we don't even have that happening on a big scale like we did. Remember when our leaders, people were just, they were Shaka, and they were all these different people that they stood out in terms of it. And so we got to get interested again, Brother Thompson, and a part of that is that where there's no prayer, where there's no family unity, where there are family conflicts and people don't have standard families, then they feel abandoned and left out. And this is one of the things I said last week in my remarks at the senior center was, each of you can reach out and find someone to embrace. If you don't have kids or grandkids, that we got a foster grandparent program here. We got people. We've already established the relationship between children and grandparents when they are paired up. That it has a profound impact on the child's development. And we just have to stop being so busy about ourselves that we take time for others.
Well, one of the things about it, can we take a moment to talk about the impact of your speech at the senior center? There were so many people that called me and basically said that they got to know you on a whole different level. There were things that no one even took the time to know. I literally had somebody call me and say, look, you need to sit down and you need to do an interview with Dr. Warren and let him go, because there's so much about the levels that he has gone through that so many people don't know. So it's like, you know how sometimes that when you talk with so much authority, sometimes people wonder, where do you get all of that authority from? But then when you hear the background in the road that you have traveled to get to this point, you understand now the authority. You know
Well,
what
I
I'm saying?
think one of the things that happened Saturday, there are a lot of people in that community that are 90, 98, 95. And I mean, they're up there and you wouldn't know it because they're active and they're still sharp. And I think when I started talking about where we had come from, and I shared my own experiences of picking cotton with my grandmother or with my great grandfather in the tobacco slide in the fields, and researching family history in the cemetery there, and with the family, and just going back, that people could relate to elements of their own family and their history, and so that helped make a tremendous difference. It was an emotional time for me with the people that were there. But again, we have to be interested in moving beyond just being entertained, and this is something that we haven't quite caught on to yet, because it's so many places, Dr. Thompson, that the church was a place of education. And I've shared so many times that we've tried to have regular meetings that we come together pre-pandemic and have discussion groups and just talk. That's why Joan Kroc left all that money and built a center at USD, the Center for Peace and Justice, because this is a place for an exchange of ideas among people. And she built several of those centers around the country. And this is the kind of thing that happens every week on the East Coast, from north to south, in political circles, where people, if they're not in power, they're discussing their plans or what they want to do when they get there. And so we're the only ones that think that when the workday ends, we should be on the beach or kicking it with a brew, and we don't want to give but so much time coming out. And that's why we can't improve the schools, because so many people's attitude is, well, my children are grown. Then when their children messed up and they had to take up the grandchildren and take up their education, then they found themselves right back at what they were trying to get away from.
Yeah.
And so I just want I want this to be a time of generating reflection and thought. And when people start thinking about what they can do, and it doesn't take a lot, one or two can make the difference. Then we can go forward.
Yeah, and I think that's, the scripture says where two or three are gathered in my name, there he will be in the midst. And so that takes us back to the whole concept that we have to bring prayer back into the mix. When we bring prayer back into the mix, where two or three are gathered in his name, there he's in the midst. So if two and three are together and God is in the midst, those two or three can literally change the atmosphere everywhere they go, because the scripture says one could put 1,000 to flight, but two could put 10,000 to flight. So if you got two folks in agreeing under anointing in the direction of God, they could make a tremendously impactful statement in any environment that they're in, from schools to businesses to communities. We have to bring back prayer and put it back in the mix.
Well, we see that. You and I experience that every week with Black Men and Women United. Started back in 2004 or 5, and we've maintained all these years. But we start every meeting with prayer, and we have an open discussion for whatever people want to put on the table. If there's a need that we can collectively focus on, we reach in our pockets and we address it. We don't have treasure, we don't have nonprofit, we don't have all those structures that hamper us in terms of what we do. And it's healing to be able to hold conversations where you don't have to necessarily agree, but at least you can talk because there's no unwritten rule say that you can only hold a conversation when people agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
The growth comes in the discussion
Yeah.
and the room for new ideas.
Yeah, and that's the thing that we have to get to the point to be able to agree, to disagree agreeably. You know what I'm saying? I love what I call the candidate. I'm gonna just call it the candidate where we could disagree and still go out and have a cup of coffee, or still go and break bread together. It's almost like understanding a marriage or a friendship. I don't like you today, but I love you. You know what I'm saying? And we're not going to always see eye to eye, but for communities to grow, it's just not cookie cutter. It is literally us being able to agree to disagree, coming to the table, and then doing what we feel is best for the community. And we have to stop being in the mindset that if you don't like what I'm saying, I'm going to take my toys and go home.
This is true. And we have to get there. And I'm so concerned for this community because there's so many people here that have a lot to offer, but there's still folks they don't want to talk to,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no room for that kind of segregated thinking. If you're going to be a leader, you got to be a healer. When I find I have issues with people, I get angry often, just like anybody else. But as I get older, I want to go back and see is there something I can repair? Is there something here that if there's an offense, let me extend my apologies and see how we can. But that doesn't mean that I'm turning into a carpet and then that you just gonna roll up on me because I'm kind of trying to be kind-hearted and think you're gonna roll over me. No, that's not gonna happen. And so we just got to get out of the habit of just doing everything that we been programmed to think we should do to get ahead, as opposed to one simple thing that we could do in terms of treating people as we want to be treated, which opens the doors for where we want to go.
Yeah, and I think that what is very, very important is that we just cannot walk around with our feelings on our shoulders and just be, one minute, I'm tough, but every time you just blow one way, that oh Lord, it was said this way. I tell folks as a man of God, a person that has served this community for over 40 years, Dr. Warren, I've been cussed out by some of the best people in this city. From black folks to white folks to Asian folks. I have served this community for 39 years, and I've heard it all, seen a lot of it. And at the end of the day, somebody says, "How do you make it through?" First of all, you got to have a sense of humor. And I tell people this. There was a parent just recently that use curse so. This is gonna sound bad. She cursed with so much vigor that when I heard it, it was almost like she was rapping to cadence. and and I went over there and I'm looking and I'm listening as she's just going in, and I started smiling. And so then she turned her anger towards me. What are you smiling at? I said, I have never ever heard in my life somebody curse to cadence the way you're doing. I said, have you ever thought about rapping? And all she could do was laugh, because at the end of the day, she understood that, one, she was being heard, but number two, that she was actually cursing on beat. And it was so comical to me. And everybody's like, how did you get her to laugh? I said, because she made me laugh. And everybody said, well, weren't you offended about all the things that she said? I said, here I have a person that has displaced anger, who is angry for so many things, and anybody in her way is going to get it today. So I was just in her way at that moment. But that same person will call me up, you didn't tell me you were a minister. I feel bad.
Well, Dr. Thompson, as we have fun talking about all these issues, and people have talked about podcasts. I reminded them of the fireside chats I've done over the years with Lemon Grove, that Historical Society, that covered a lot of these things. But as we are winding down here, when I'm walking outside to my car, and I'm bungled up, I'm thinking about there are people downtown, there are people in pockets of this community. They don't have a warm place to go to.
Hmm.
They don't have a bed. They don't have a bathroom just to go in and get up and walk to in the middle of the night. And yeah, there's some shelters open, but there are families sleeping in cars,
Yes.
and they're huddling their kids and parents, and that's a hard move to have people sleeping in a car, especially when it's cold. You can't run that engine. Next thing you know, if the window isn't open, you're trying to get the heat, or you're burning gas. If you don't, you cold. If you don't have the window, you have the risk of carbon dioxide poisoning and
Hmm.
killing everybody. And so the rains are coming, and I'm thinking of every time I drive downtown, it's become tent city all over downtown. I mean, the
Hmm.
tents have gotten bigger. They've gotten to be right next door to each other, just like apartment complexes,
Hmm.
and the cities still trying to put out some porta potties, and there's not enough. And I'm just thinking that there's still such a big disconnect here, and yet they are empty. There are floors and floors of empty apartments that people are writing off, and they don't want to rent. And they're talking about affordable rather than available housing. And
Hmm.
if housing is the number one crisis, then we need to just go beyond talking about it. I keep writing that it's not everybody on the street has a mental or a drug problem, and that is it's just important that we start thinking how we can help, and if there are problems with them, because the need for mental health is so great these days, and the practitioners are so few, and those of us, the people of color, we have even higher numbers of and incidents because
Hmm.
of all of the pressures that we already under. That's why we have greater health risks in every category. And so I'm not saying just pull up to everybody at your stoplight and empty your wallet, but I'm saying we got to think of what can we do.
Hmm.
There was a time like Bethel AME Church at one point. They
Hmm.
had taken that open space there, and they were putting carts in there and had deacons overnight there to supervise people
Hmm.
on cold nights, so that between the evening and sunrise, the people who slept there were in safety. And so we got a lot of locked up places, and everybody that does some help doesn't have to be paid.
Yeah.
There are people who can volunteer
Hmm.
to do many of these things in the community, and we've got to get beyond thinking that somebody has to give us a government dollar for everything that we do that's right, when we
Hmm.
know that we can get out there and find a way to do what's right.
Yeah. And Dr. Warren, it is for California and any place else, it is very, very cold. And I'm not a person that wears a jacket, but today I had a jacket, a scarf, a hat, and I was still yet very cold. So our population of our homeless, our community, because they are truly a part of our community. And I think that we have to change the narrative of how we talk about them. They're not just the homeless, but they're part of our communities. And how do we help this community of people transition their life into stability? Now, not like I said, not everybody wants to be in a home, and some do,
No.
but we could give open area and
Yeah.
say, hey, here's open area, but it's safe, it's clean. There's outhouses, there are things there that will at least make life safer for you. But those that are literally trying, when you have parents, and I have to say that we at the school that I serve, they're majority about 40% 43% homeless kids. The beautiful thing about it is that the administration of the school, shout out to Mr. Hernandez, he has he has literally made the effort to keep the school visible enough that people now are starting to come in. And we have one philanthropist that I'm not going to mention his name, but one philanthropist that literally has assigned somebody for the next 4 months to the school to literally work with families that are trying to transition from shelters into permanent residence, to the point that they're willing to pay up to almost 60 or 50% of their rent for a year to get them in position. I saw I saw a parent come in today said I could afford rent, but I just don't have enough time, money to get into this CNA program so I could be a caregiver. They said, well, what does that take? Well, it's a 16-week program and it costs this. They said, okay, go sign up and we'll pay for you to go. And they're literally trying to help change lives by saying, look, we're not going to just talk about it and do commercials. We're going to be on the ground. And literally, this woman comes almost every day and she's working with families. We had a family that had they had two cars and eight people living in both in cars. They were in between the two. And they said, we make enough money to get rent, but
They
because
can't
of
get
our
a security deposit. Can they?
exactly. And
Yeah.
so they literally said, told the school, can you help us find landlords that would rent? We will do the security deposit first, last, and we'll give them 3 months ahead. And lo and behold, our six children that were living in the cars between two cars now are in an apartment.
And that's so important, because a few years ago, before the pandemic, and I've always been on the situation that there needs to be some rental protection in
Yes.
California. In D.C., I was very involved in this whole campaign, and we were with a company that they owned all kinds of buildings, and they had high rise luxuries, and they were just doing all kinds of things to people. But I assembled a team of accountants and lawyers so that every time they tried to do a rent increase, we had them before a judge in court, and the city had a system where you had to justify by unit why you were making the increase. And pretty soon, we got to the understanding that if they wanted to do an increase, they would come to us and say, let's meet first so we don't even have to go to court
Yeah.
because these people were giving their time voluntarily. That's why folks moved to curtail things like legal services.
Yeah.
We got the Legal Aid Society, but it is only a shadow of what legal services was when it was first implemented,
Yeah.
and how the Republicans, when they came to office, cut it back and redefined it and did all these things to limit what could be done in terms of service.
Yeah.
And so I think, Dr. Thompson, that we're going to keep on talking about these issues. And I would love for people to write some letters to the editors, email their family issues we want to discuss. We talked about one on our program. We have a person who is a teacher in the school district, and they and several people are losing their jobs because of the mask mandate, and how that affected them, and the denial of religious exemptions. And it's just a lot of issues out there that we need to be aware of beyond ourselves.
Yeah. And one of the things that we want to continue to encourage people is that the San Diego Voice and Viewpoint solicits your letters. If there's a cause that you want to say, don't just call in, but write it down, put it in writing, and let's make it a part of history. Get your letters into is it info at SD?
Is sdvoice.info.
Okay, sdvoice.info, so that your voice can be heard and you can read it and then you can send it because it is digital as well as it is hard copy.
Both.
We want you all to actively get involved in what we are the right now.
And we got issues right now. We got black issues. We got communities that need to come together. We got an African community doing its own thing. We try to let people know that, you might speak with a different accent, but to other people, you just like us. You the same color.
Yeah.
And we need to be working together rather than pulling in different directions. So
Yes,
I hope
yes,
we
yes.
can make some progress on these issues.
Well, Dr. Warren, we have come to the end of our show. It has been, a great conversation as we move forward throughout the weeks. They're going to have special guests. I know we're kind of waiting because we're still building out the studio, and we're going to make some transitions
Yes.
over the next couple of weeks. That's going to make us look better, sound better, and appear better on TV as we get ready for this national and international presence. We want to thank you all for your support and continue to tune in. We want you to start telling people if you have some topics that you want to discuss. I'm going to say if you want to get in front of one of the senior elders in communities and you have questions that need to be addressed, let's address them. Let's talk about it. Let's call in and be a part of this show from the desk of the editor. Dr. Warner, final words.
I want to thank you again and those who listen and support us. And there's no stupid question or comment. You will not be embarrassed here. If anything, if you have a question, somebody else has got the same concern. And we'll just work together to find solutions. Until then, keep and restore prayer to your life. Be at peace